Precisely at 4:14 a.m. at the Novorossiysk port, standing on the deck of an improved Kilo-class submarine worth $470 million, a Russian sailor ignites a cigarette, completely oblivious that floating less than 3 feet from his hull is death itself. Within exactly 30 seconds, what begins as a routine night watch will turn into a catastrophic failure, leaving the Russian Black Sea Fleet completely paralyzed. Russia's fatal mistake, however, wasn't just that they were attacked. It was that they walked straight into a trap the SBU had meticulously programmed months beforehand. As long as the IL-38N Sea Dragon remained airborne, the SBU understood that any maritime drone was nothing more than a $50,000 paperweight. To eliminate the submarine, blinding the Dragon had to come first. If you commanded this mission before sending in the drones, how would you bring down a Sea Dragon? What's about to unfold in the math of this operation is a masterclass in strategic destruction, making even the best ROI on Wall Street appear like pocket change. At 11 p.m., deep inside Ukraine at a secluded airstrip, down the tarmac rolls a Beaver drone, lifting into the freezing darkness. Ukraine's premier deep strike asset, this is. The chocks are pulled by the ground crew. Over the rough asphalt, the drone accelerates, bouncing before it claws its way into the black sky. After takeoff immediately, the onboard flight computer executes a hard dive at a terrifyingly low altitude of just 150 feet, leveling off. At its most extreme, this is nap of the Earth flying. At this height, behind the curvature of the Earth and the tree lines, the drone is physically hiding, making it invisible to the long-range S-400 search radars that are scanning from Crimea. The communication modules inside the drone are dead. No Starlink exists, no radio control, no video feed. Transmitting a signal now would illuminate Russian electronic warfare sensors like a flare in a dark room. Instead, flying completely autonomous is the Beaver, guided by a military-grade anti-jamming GPS coupled with a high-precision laser wing gyroscope. Where it is, it knows exactly, and more importantly, where it is going, it knows exactly. Through the freezing air for 3 hours, the drone cuts, ghosting past Russian air defense zones. With mathematical perfection, it navigates waypoints, every millisecond correcting for wind drift. As the final perimeter of Yeisk airbase is crossed by it, the Russian airwaves remain silent. No frantic radio calls, no sirens. The modified Beaver has arrived at the party, and the bouncer hasn't even looked up. Perfectly set is the trap. At 1:47 a.m., 3 miles from the runway threshold, a slight altitude correction must be made by the Beaver drone to clear a line of power cables. To 200 feet it climbs. That extra 50 feet of elevation becomes a violation of the laws of survival. A flicker is caught by the spinning search radar of a Panzer S-1 air defense system on the edge of the tarmac. To radio waves usually, the Beaver's composite body is transparent. But at this point-blank range, a specific microdoppler return is created by the spinning wooden propeller that the Russian software recognizes instantly. From a passive green to a violent strobing red, the radar screen in the command vehicle flashes. With a mechanical scream, the Russian base wakes up. To howl, the klaxon air raid sirens begin, tearing through the cold silence of the airfield. Faster than any human could, the Panzer S-1 vehicle reacts. As it slews 90 degrees in less than a second, its hydraulic turret wins, pointing its dual 30mm cannons and 12 missile tubes directly at the incoming darkness. Instantly across the entire secure military network, the alert propagates. 300 meters away in Novorossiysk, in the harbor command center, the red phone rings. Into condition red, the sleepy garrison is jolted. Sweeping the black water, searchlights snap on. To life, the engines of the Raptor patrol boats roar, churning the water into white froth. To the maximum setting, shore-based sonar operators crank their gain knobs, flooding the underwater acoustic channel with energy. To the Russians, like a desperate amateurish attempt by Ukraine to score a PR victory, this looks. They believe already they have won. Off the missile launch button, the Panzer operator flips the safety cover. A solid continuous lock tone the fire control radar achieves. To the entire world, blown wide open, the Ukrainian plan looks. Dead is the element of surprise. About to be vaporized is the drone, and now fully awake are the defenses at the harbor. Like a catastrophe it looks, but here is the genius detail almost everyone misses. Just as the trigger is squeezed by the Panzer operator toward the ground, the Beaver drone does not dive. To crash into the hangar walls it does not try. Instead, maintaining its altitude, it flies exactly 50 feet directly above the stationary IL-38N Sea Dragon that's parked on the hard stand. The command code the SBU operator sends, like a claymore mine pointed at the Earth, the warhead inside the Beaver functions. A directional air burst charge it is. With terrifying precision, physics takes over. Open, the detonation casing splits, unleashing a cone of 2,000 preformed tungsten tubes. A split second later, the Panzer missile launches, intercepting the drone and vaporizing it in a fireball. But a ghost is what the Russian defense is fighting. Already delivered has been the payload. On the ground, surgical violence is the scene. The top of the IL-38N, the hail of tungsten shreds. Through the delicate fiberglass mushroom radome on the aircraft spine, the fragments bunch, instantly destroying the NAVAL P-38 anti-submarine sensor suite. Downward they continue inside, slicing through the aluminum fuselage, severing hydraulic lines and turning the cockpit avionics into sparking ruin. Sprinting toward his aircraft, the Russian pilot skids to a halt. In horror, he watches as from the perforated wings, fuel begins to leak. Blown up, the plane hasn't been. Executed, it has been. Within 5 seconds, the Russian Black Sea Fleet has been blinded by Ukraine. Legally dead is the $24 million eye in the sky. Thinking they scored a kill, the Panzer crew cheers, unaware that they just protected a corpse. Now wide open is the airspace above the Black Sea, and standing between the harbor and the underwater assassins, the only thing is gone. At 2:15 a.m., exactly 10 seconds is how long the celebration in the Kiev bunker lasts. A tactical victory, the destruction of the IL-38N was, but it triggers a strategic nightmare. With their eye in the sky blinded, at Novorossiysk, the Russian command realizes they are vulnerable. Just raise the alert level, the base commander doesn't. Scorched earth, he goes. Seal the harbor. Over the secure line, he screams. At the harbor mouth, into the main shipping channel, tugboats begin pushing old rust bucket barges. The seacocks they open, scuttling them to create a physical wall of steel across the entrance. Simultaneously, from a silent library into a heavy metal concert, the acoustic environment underwater turns. To maximum active power, every shore-based sonar array is cranked. Listening anymore, they aren't. Screaming, they are. The water, the high-frequency pings saturate, bouncing off every rock, fish, and hull in the bay. On the surface, a frenzy it is. Aggressive figure eights, Raptor patrol boats are cutting into the water. Their crews are throwing random stun grenades to crush the hulls of any incoming divers or drones. The piers with thermal scopes and iglomantads sailors line, scanning the dark waves for a single ripple. Just entering the outer perimeter is the Sea Baby drone. In Kiev of color, the drone operator's face drains. Off the charts spiking, the telemetry screen shows the acoustic interference. Into a sensory toolbox the harbor has become. We can't go in. His voice type, the mission commander says. Too high is the sonar density. If even at 10% power we run the motor, the cavitation they will hear instantly. At his hands, the operator stares. Shaking, they are. Months of planning, millions of dollars in development, and the destruction of the IL-38N. By a thread, all of it hangs. 2 miles out, the drone is sitting, and slamming shut is the door. One shot they have, and from difficult to suicidal, the odds just went. At 2:35 a.m., looking for a fight, the Russians are. For high-speed propellers, electric motor hum, and the cavitation of machines trying to force their way in, they are scanning. So not to give them a fight, the operator in Ukraine decides. Silence, he gives them. Dies the humming of their electric motors. Into sleep mode, the active guidance systems go. To any electronic sensor to exist, they effectively cease. The genius of the plan, this is. Into a chaotic soup of active sonar noise, the Russians have turned the harbor, creating a deafening background roar. By trying to hear everything, impossible to hear the quietest thing, they have made it. Now drifting, the drones are warships. They are no longer essentially 1,000 pounds logs. They are the pilot. Physics becomes into the harbor at a steady 2 knots. The natural tidal current of the Black Sea is flowing. This invisible conveyor belt the drones ride. Sluggishly they drift, bobbing in the dark water, moving exactly at the speed of the surrounding liquid. Right past the frantic patrol boats, they float, blinded by the clutter of their own panic. The sonar operators filter out the slow-moving contacts as drifting trash or dead fish. The steel boom nets the drones approach, designed to catch surface torpedoes. The barriers are, but near the muddy seabed to allow tidal flow, they have a gap. To neutral buoyancy ballasted, just inches off the bottom. The drones slip under the heavy steel mesh like smoke under a door. Calm is the water inside the harbor. The faint light from the surface, the massive black shape of the Kilo-class submarine blocks out. A sleeping monster it is, unaware that latched on the parasites have. In Kiev, dead silent is the room. Closing tick by agonizing tick, the telemetry screen shows the distance to target. 100 feet, 80 feet, 50 feet. Through the drone's low-light camera, the operator can see the submarine's 7-bladed propeller. Massive, motionless, and completely exposed, it is. Over the trigger guard, his thumb hovers. Right there filling the screen, the target is. For the kill shot, he has 2 choices. Option A, the stern, strike, destroy the propeller, the rudder, and the shaft seals. Flood and sink, the sub will, but intact, the hull might remain. Option B, amidships, strike. The forward tubes loaded with caliber cruise missiles target. A smaller initial explosion this risks, but if the Russian missiles the warhead sets off the entire pier, the secondary blast will erase. If you were the operator holding that joystick, which spot would you choose? The guaranteed disable or the high risk, high reward total annihilation? In the comments below, tell me your choice and the most tactical answer I will pin. Because what happened next didn't just sink a ship, the Kremlin, it shook. At 4:09 a.m., from the SBU mission commander in Kiev, into his microphone, he leans and speaks a single cold word, detonate. 2,000 miles away, deep in the Novorossiysk harbor mud, the command in 3 milliseconds, the logic boards inside the 2C baby drones process. Once kick, the electric motors, a final spasm to drive the warheads firmly against the submarine steel skin. Then white, the world turns. Simultaneously directly under the submarine's stern, both drones detonate. A Hollywood fireball, this isn't. A physics event, this is. Into superheated gas instantly, 1,000 pounds of high-grade explosive transforms. Being incompressible, the water refuses to move out of the way. Like a solid concrete anvil, instead, it acts, forcing 100% of that violence upward. On the surface, 2 feet into the air, the pier jumps. Of mud and white foam, a massive geyser shoots 200 feet into the sky, dwarfing the nearby cranes. A split second later, the sound comes. A deep, wet crack that 3 miles away in the city center shatters windows. But in the milliseconds after the flash, the real destruction happens. Where Ukrainian engineering genius reveals itself, this is. Just explode, the warheads didn't. A programmable millisecond delay fuse they used. Why? If on contact they had exploded, wasted splashing water around, much of the energy would have been. By delaying the detonation until effectively buried against the hull by the initial impact momentum, the warhead was a water hammer effect the explosion creates. Through the submarine's outer light hull, the pressure wave punches, and into the inner pressure hull slams. Because from below the explosion happens, enters the steel tube, the shock wave, and gets trapped inside. Off the internal bulkheads, it bounces, amplifying its own destructive power. Catastrophic structural failure, the result is, like a dry twig, the massive steel rudder snaps off. A solid bar of steel thick enough to support a tank, the propeller shaft is twisted violently out of alignment, shredding the watertight seals in the engineering compartment. Just leak, the submarine stern doesn't. Disintegrates, it, into the engineering room at 600 lbs per square inch of force. Strong enough to cut a human body in half, the Black Sea rushes. On the pier, chaos erupts. Deafened by the blast, Russian sailors are running in circles. To scream, Alarm klaxons begin, joining the chorus of shouting officers. To the edge of the dock, damage control teams rush, deploying pumps and hoses. But like trying to empty a swimming pool with a teaspoon, it is. Repealed, the laws of buoyancy have been. To groan begins the 30,000-ton Kilo-class submarine, a terrifying sound of twisting metal. Like a stone, the stern drops, dragging the bow upward. Heavily, the vessel lists, tilting 30 degrees to starboard. Now dead in the water is the unsinkable missile carrier, its internal organs flooded with salt water and battery acid. 24 hours later, the humiliation, high-resolution commercial satellite imagery confirms. On the harbor bottom, the submarine is resting. At a sickly angle, barely breaking the surface, its conning tower is. But an even greater irony, the satellite photos reveal. In their panic, immediately after the blast, to stop any further attacks, the Russians frantically sank 2 more barges across the harbor entrance. In doing so, what Ukraine could not, they achieved. Their own remaining fleet inside the harbor, they successfully trapped. A navy, the Black Sea Fleet, is no longer a prisoner in its own home. It is. By destroying the IL-38N Sea Dragon at the airbase and the Kilo-class submarine at the pier within the same 24-hour window, effectively blinded and castrated the Black Sea Fleet simultaneously. Ukraine has. Terrified now is the fleet. Terrorized, the remaining Russian ships are. Patrolling, they stop. To enter the harbor, the logistics ships refuse, fearing invisible mines or drones. For the next 96 hours, freezes solid the entire supply chain of the Black Sea Fleet. On the front lines, immediate is the effect. That rely on naval supply lines, the artillery batteries start rationing shells. The momentum Ukrainian forces seize, pushing forward while busy chasing ghosts in their own harbors. The Russian rearguard is. But psychological is the worst damage. Offensives, the Russian commanders are no longer planning. Paranoia, they are fighting. Like a sea baby, every ripple in the water looks. Like a beaver, every bird on the radar looks. Shorter meetings, they are holding, sleeping less, and on defenses that clearly don't work, spending millions. More powerful than the explosive itself, the fear of the invisible drone has become a weapon. So satisfied with that level of destruction, are you? If you support the underdog changing the rules of war, smash that like button. And for you tech geeks, I have a question. Which piece of engineering impressed you more? The airburst drone that blinded the plane, or the silent underwater assassin that drifted into the harbor? In the comments below, type air or water. So you don't miss the next deep dive, make sure you are subscribed. Glory to the heroes. In the next breakdown, see you.